because you're, okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you do something out of proportion to that, so like, let's say you, yeah, you say, and he may never leave the house until he reaches the age of 15 or whatever. Okay, that then is out of proportion to the difference, okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense for Truth, Kylie?
Yeah, so you said fairness is something that's unproportionate. What did you say?
Okay, well, look on page 19, on the right-hand column, right there where he says fairness as we have seen. You see that? Towards the bottom of the right-hand column of 19.
Oh, yes.
Consist in treating equals equally and unequals unequally in proportion to their inequality. So it would be unfair to do an extreme distinction that's not justified by the difference in your ages, your height, your intelligence, whatever it would be.
Right, you're treated up to how unequal you actually are.
Yeah.
Right.
So then it wouldn't be fair then, like you said, to get, do that out of proportion, like the driving and.
Sure, exactly.
Or it could be, you take a quiz and you miss one question. Hallie takes a quiz and misses 2. So just give Hallie a 0. You're being treated unequally because you got unequal grades, but it's not in proportion, right? Okay, and then justice then, or injustice, is the violation of natural rights. So someone has a right to life. It is unjust to murder them. It may not be unfair. Still unjust. Now, there are instances of unfairness that are instances of injustice, and that would be in a case like with the grades, right? Where it would be unjust to fail Hallie for missing 2 questions. And unless it was out of 2, that's fair. Fine, out of 10. So basically, I think so. Basically, justice. Now, here's a question for you. I'm going to talk about justice a lot. What about law? From whence does law derive its legitimacy? Right? Because we have a so-called justice system in the so-called United States. Right? But how does that system pursue justice? Is it evaluating everything in terms of rights?
As well as laws.
Ethan?
Well, out of those 3 things, right, at the beginning of our reading?
Yes, that's what we're going to get to.
Okay.
But I'm asking another question now.
Oh, I thought it was, I was talking about it.
We have a justice system, so-called justice system. Actually, we have a so-called Department of Justice, right? And within that Department of Justice, we have things like the FBI, the Attorney General's office, etc., right? The DEA, things like that, right? Now, these different entities, do they go out and enforce justice? What do they enforce?
The law.
The laws. So how can someone say that the enforcement of the law will prompt an enforcement of justice? Or how does the laws made by the state derive their authority from justice? Ethan, what's one of them?
By the enactment of measures that protect natural rights.
So enactment of what?
Of measures that protect natural rights.
That protect natural right. Okay, very good. It's another one. What's that?
By legislation that prescribes or safeguards fairness in transactions among individuals.
Right. So safeguards transactional fairness. In the third, Audrey?
By regulating matters affected with the public interest for the general welfare.
Yeah, regulates. Let's say general welfare of community.
By the way, here, just to clarify, welfare here does not mean what we like in it today, where you have people who don't earn adequate income, and so they're given welfare. It's just the general well-being of society. Yeah.
So these are the three things that tell you whether or not a law is just. Who has the authority to make laws? Well, what do we call that body or that, what would you call it? Organization, not organization, because it could be an individual.
Yeah, no.
What do you call the thing that makes
Entity.
laws?
That entity.
Yeah, the entity that makes laws. Lizette?
The government?
More specific. Kylie?
The authority?
More specific. Ethan?
Those who have been constitutionally authorized to legislate for the welfare of the community.
Right. What would we call them? Jonah?
Legislative.
The legislature. With the lawmaker. Now, Ethan gave us an example. I'm not gonna be able to do anything about that. You're just gonna have to listen. Legislature, the three things that make a just law on page 24.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If I could help, I would. I lost my train of thought. Ethan gave us one example of a legislature, which would be a, as he says, legislative body set up by the Constitution, right? But there are other types. What are some other examples of legislative entities? Hallie?
A queen.
Sure, and what sort of system?
Monarchy.
A monarchy, very good. So in the monarchy, it would be the king or the queen. What else?
A prime minister?
Prime minister doesn't make the laws.
Oh, no, you're right. The president.
President doesn't make the laws.
Oh.
What do we call our legislature?
The House.
Congress.
That's
Quick
a-
civics lesson. The United States government is made up of three branches: the executive, legislative, and the judicial. The judicial is the Supreme Court. They interpret the laws. The executive is the president. He executes the laws, right? He puts them into practice. And the legislative is Congress. That is Senate and the House of Representatives, and that's where laws are made. That's where a bill becomes law. Right? We all knew that. That was an unnecessary review of our system of government in the United States. Good. Anyway, no, you don't need to participate if you're on Zoom.
You mean the vanilla symbol?
Who's asking that?
What's wrong with Jude?
Kylie always smells like
Tell us
Yeah, I
who
did
that
that.
It's
was.
just, me and I both raised our hands a few times, but it didn't.
I'm busy teaching. Jude, quit eating food in class.
Guys, don't worry. I'll send my notes on the group chat for you all.
Well, there's
Thank you,
also.
Kylie.
You're
This
welcome.
is being recorded, so you can re-listen to it or rewatch it. Turn it into an MP3 and sell it and give me royalties. So, I mean, there are other ways to make it right. So you have kings, you could have a tyrant, you could have a mixed system, right? A constitutional monarchy, like what England currently has. You could have an oligarchy, like ancient Sparta. You could have, well, no, that would just be democracy. That's normal democracy. You could have, I don't know. Yeah, an aristocracy. Well, yeah, an aristocracy. I mean, that's what the Magna Carta it established an aristocracy formally in terms of governance, all sorts of stuff. But according to Adler, there's really only one type of state that we can call just. And what would that be? He's already talked about this.
Despotic government. That
would
would.
No.
What do we have? Republic?
A republic, just a republic?
A democratic republic.
A democratic, just any democratic republic?
The People's Democratic Republic.
Yeah, People's Democratic Republic of, say, Korea.
Oh, no.
So I think they're the Democratic People's Republic, yeah, DPRK.
Wait, so what's the answer?
I'm asking you,
What is the chief instrument of law in the United States?
the law of the land.
No. What does the Supreme Court do?
In theory, the law.
Judge what?
Yeah.
I'm not my
And on
cynicism
what
out.
basis does the Supreme Court judge laws?
Justice.
Nope. Hopefully, that's not.
A quick civics lesson. Back in the late 1700s, there you go. The Constitution. Mr. Bryan is disappointed, and he doesn't even know why.
I mean,
So the legislature or the just government would be a
yeah.
constitutional democratic
Can you read that?
republic. Can you read that? All right.
CDR.
Okay, so what's constitutional mean? There's a constitution. What's a constitution?
A set of rules.
Okay, just any old set of rules.
Agreed.
Yeah, that can be agreed on.
Document.
To keep the people in check and the government in check.
That's a purpose, yes.
In order to form a more perfect union.
That's right. Our forefathers brought.
Sure, domestic tranquility.
Nope. A constitution in general, in terms of government, I mean, we have that too, talk about someone's constitution. It's how it's made up. So it's a document that lays out the structure and roles of a government. Right, and so constitutions differ between different entities. For example, we have the United States Constitution that governs our federal government and the makeup of the whole country. And then you could have something like the Kansas State Constitution. Have any of you read the Kansas State Constitution?
No.
Not recently.
You should. It is interesting. I kind of read it on a whim over the summer. It was the first time I read the whole thing. I was like, well, this is interesting. There's some interesting provisions in it. Things.
Don't keep using the word interesting.
Well, maybe I can get you to go read it on your own.
Don't you buy it?
Why do you want me to do all this work for you? Jeez.
Not a lawyer.
And then you have democratic. What does it mean to be democratic?
The people.
Right? The people. So crat would mean rule. So the rule of the people, right? But in a pure democracy, how do you decide things?
Everybody votes.
Everybody votes. Does everybody vote on some things?
Every,
No, they vote on every.
you have to have an odd number of
Right.
people living there. There were two choices.
And then a republic. What's a republic? A democratic republic's elected leaders, but republic, right? Res publicos, the things of the public, things of the people. But a republic is where you have, it's representative government, where you have, instead of all 330 million or billion or million people in the United States voting on every single issue, it is, we vote on our representatives and we vote on our senators to go to Washington, DC, and to hopefully represent our beliefs voting on things, right?
And
Their
the reason,
constituency.
Ellie, that it's not necessarily elected representatives is, for example, up until the early 20th century in the United States, senators were not elected by the people.
Right.
They were appointed
As
by the
God intended.
legislatures of each state
Repeal the 17th Amendment.
until 1913.
Pretty sure it's the 7th.
I never can remember.
Popular election of senators caused the downfall of this country. Anyway,
So we were
Go
down
on.
since 1913.
yeah, that's also the year the Federal Reserve was created,
Yeah,
so
yeah. And those two
it's
probably.
a double whammy.
those
It's
two
just
probably go
tumbling
together.
The Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. Anyway,
What is the Federal Reserve?
that's the problem. Ah,
It's a
I'm
group
confused.
that regulates the value of money,
Maybe
interest rates,
$3
etc.
trillion.
it's
Oh,
it's
gross.
anti-liberty, and it is a conspiracy. Anyway, I'm about to. I'm gonna get this. This is gonna get banned off the YouTubes if I keep this up. No, all right-thinking people realize that the Federal Reserve is silly and should be done away with. Anyway, why do you think we're in the state that we're in?
I can't remember the word.
What?
That's why I'm in this state. Never mind. We need to behave more for these.
Yeah, we're running out of time. Anyway, where am I from? I'm from Kansas.
Yeah.
The
Well, I knew
early.
that, but I didn't know.
I was born down the street. Isn't that exciting?
Mm.
No,
sick.
is it? It
On
really is.
Stormont
Wow, Kylie just hurt my feelings.
Wait, have you ever?
No,
gone
yeah, that's
to New
important.
Orleans?
Born in Stormont Vale or St. Francis?
Yeah.
Vale, Vale, Vale.
Yeah.
Francis,
Francis.
Francis.
No, we don't
top.
like St. Francis.
Vale, all the way.
I was born in San
Why?
Actually, Francis is better.
Okay,
No, it's not.
so
Francis has worse.
let's say the government makes a law and it comes up to you and says, you know, Taryn, it is now a law that you have to dye your hair bright green.
That is not good.
What are you gonna say?
No, it's not.
No. And they say, pretty please. What are you gonna say? No. And they go, well, we can't force you to do it, so darn. Is that law worth anything?
There's no coercion.
No, because what has to be behind any given law to make it effective?
Coercion.
Coercion. Now let's say, Taryn, government comes up to you and says, Taryn, we made a law. You have to dye your hair bright green. What are you gonna say?
No.
No. And then they point a gun at you and say, yeah, you really should.
Then I guess.
There you go, right? There's a difference between a law that is made without the, any rule made without the authority to enforce it is no rule at all. All right? So the state, when they make a law, they are saying that it will be enforced with coercive force up to and including death. Right? So let's think about the other end of that. Just because the government has the ability to coerce Taryn into dyeing her hair bright green, is it right that they make that law?
No.
No.
No. Why?
Unjust.
Why is it unjust?
Because it goes against my rights as a human.
Which right?
Right.
Yeah.
Who owns your hair?
I do.
Precisely, it's your property. So it's a violation of property rights for the government to threaten you with violence to dye your hair green. As much as we want that to happen. Now, might does not make right, because on what does a righteous or just law depend to be right? Natural moral law, the real goods, safeguards transactional fairness, or regulates the general welfare of a community. Now, there are two, did I ask you? I asked you natural law and positive law.
Yes.
Good question.
It's kind of.
Naturalist.
So like. Okay, so the vaccines, you know,
Mhm.
they regulate the general welfare of the community, I would say. But some people say they violate your natural rights, your own property to your own body.
Mhm.
So enforcing vaccines.
So what takes precedence?
Don't they do that with like highways?
Natural rights.
Why would
Well,
natural
general
rights?
welfare of the community. That's
Well, for
wrong.
myself.
I don't know. Wait, what was?
Well, that's the question that needs to be decided then, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question that's actually at stake.
Yeah.
If we accept these three criteria for a just law, and it seems that two of them contradict each other, or they're in tension with each other, either these are not the appropriate criteria for a just law, or one of these takes precedence over the other. And then we have to decide what's going on there, right? Are these all equal? If they are equal, are they all appropriate? Those questions.
Don't they do that with like highways? Like a farmer, they can take your land, make a highway. it's for the good of the community.
Yeah, it's called eminent domain.
Yeah,
But there they have to compensate the
there's
landowner.
less farmers, so they don't have as much to say. It's the system.
Sure,
But it's not just.
that is different though,
Yeah.
because they compensate you. They take it. And you can fight it. I mean, like Cap's a bike shop, which I think is still open.
I know.
When I was in high school, like downtown by Washburn, a big old fight over that. Because they wanted to take it to build the student apartments, and they said no, and they won in court, so they weren't eminent domain. That's not what it's called. I don't remember what it's called.
The bike shop
I think-
on
Gary's?
Lane, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a big deal.
oh, it was a big old deal.
Oh,
It was
Yeah.
kind of funny to watch
Alright.
unfold.
Gary's
When
nice.
cars parked there, they're like, off the
So-
road.
Yes. So, but yeah, but that's the question. What do we go with? And then, and then there are further things that come out of whatever way we go with it. Are we willing to countenance those things? Are we not? Okay. So, and these are all very important questions, but we're not quite there yet because we need to figure out what the difference between a natural law and a positive law is. Can anyone tell me the difference between natural law and a positive law? Yes, kind of.
The naturalists, as that name indicates, affirm the existence of natural justice, of natural and unalienable rights, of the natural moral law, and of valid prescriptive acts that elicit our assent, both independently of and prior to the existence of positive law. Adverse 25. I want the people on the line to hear. Continuing on. This is the definition that Adler gives for the naturalist view. Naturalists also believe that might equals right and force without authority is might without right. Adler 26. The positivists' view is simply the opposite. They believe in the man-made law that determines what is just and unjust, right and wrong.
All right, very good.
That would be mine.
You cannot read that. I will rewrite that in a different color. Anyone else? Was that? Go and read yours.
I can do that too. I had a question, but.
Ah, I found it.
Oh,
Anyway, what was that?
I had a question and I can read mine.
Go and read your paragraph, then ask your question.
So I had the same quiz, Carly. Could I just state the page number it's on or read the entire thing?
Just read it.
It takes less time just to
Just read it.
Okay. The naturalists, as the name indicates, affirm the existence of natural justice, of natural and unalienable rights, the natural and moral law, and a valid prescriptive oughts that illicit are assent both independently and prior to the existence of positive law. The positivists deny all this and affirm the opposite. Then the positive law, the man-made law of the state, provides only prescriptive oughts that human beings are compelled to obey. Adler 25. In this quote, Adler explains the difference between the positivist and the naturalist. Both groups believe in a set of laws that must be followed. The naturalists, according to Adler, abide by the natural laws such as natural rights and moral law, while positivists abide by man-made laws and state-said commands. They believe that nothing is just or unjust unless declared by the state themselves. This is the difference Adler makes when comparing the two groups.
Very good. What's your question then?
So, do the positivists, are they just slave to the law or like to the state? Or,
Well, that's a good question. What do you mean? Well, can you expand on what you mean by that?
well, like blindly obey what the law, like the state has to say, or whatever authorities?
Well, it depends. Do they want to follow? Well, for the positivist, what does it mean to live well in a political context?
I don't know,
Like how should people live according to the positivist?
by the state? Or,
Well, according to the laws. So then the good life is a life that follows all the laws. Then, so then if someone wants to live a good life, then they would have to follow all the laws. But is everyone going to follow all the laws?
no,
Not necessarily. So then it's, slave to it in what sense is the question, because we're all, we all follow something, right? Is it Socrates says nobody acts to their own detriment? Right. Yeah. Any other questions there? Anyone else want to read their paragraphs? Ethan?
I have a question.
Okay.
I got kind of confused when you're saying about naked rights and naked might. I just didn't follow very much. What
Are
is
you looking at
power?
24?
24 and 25.
oh, yeah.
So naked right without might, authority devoid of power, may speak with the tongue of angels, but it will not serve for the government of a community of men and women. If men were angels, Alexander Hamilton wrote, no government would be necessary. That is, no government exercising coercive force to make its authority effective. The contrary view is the dream of utopian anarchists who imagine a blissful community in which human beings live together in peace and concord without any application of coercive force. Naked might without right, power devoid of authority, is no utopian dream. It is a harsh reality that has existed from the beginning of recorded time. So what's your question?
I also just get lost in the jumble of words and might and right and utopia and anarchy. I read the naked right and I was like, that sounds like utopia. And he's like, no, this is the opposite of utopia. So I don't know, I just got confused.
So the naked right, that is just right,
Okay.
has no power behind it to enforce it,
Okay.
right? Naked might is just power with no right to it.
What do you mean by right? Like natural rights?
Justice.
Okay.
And Ethan, when it says the contrary view is the dream of utopian anarchists,
Mhm.
that's contrary not to naked right, but to what Alexander Hamilton, which is actually what James Madison wrote.
That's wrong. Kylie?
So would naked right be referring to the positivist view then?
Not really.
No. There, it's a discussion of like forcing Taryn to dye her hair green. That's really what we're talking about. It may be just for Taryn to have her hair dyed green, and she should be forced to do it. But if I don't have the power to force her to do it, it doesn't matter.
I mean, to
Right?
me,
I can
that
be
sounds
totally
like,
righteous in my cause to get her to dye her hair green.
yeah. To me, it sounds like the positivist law because it's like
My goal
man-made and you're saying it's a right, but you don't really have the authority behind it.
Well, yeah, you could have a situation, if I'm understanding this correctly, where we all, let's say we have the natural right to life. Okay, but as Hamilton says, you know, we need government to enforce that right because there are going to be people that are going to come along and take that right from you. And so it's a naked, unprotected right. And so it's not going to be honored in a society of wicked people.
Okay.
That makes sense, because it doesn't have the might of government or some kind of coercive force behind it.
Okay.
That does seem to be the implication. So returning to natural law and positive law, natural law stems from the natural moral law, right, that we talked about last class. It stems from our natural rights. It is not man-made, right? It is independent of man-made law and precedes man-made law. All right, precedes, that's it. Precedes is an important word here. It exists beforehand. Positive law, on the other hand, is essentially the opposite. It's man-made law. It's the law passed by the state. So the naturalist would say that we should base all of our man-made laws and all of our arguments concerning justice on the natural moral law. Right? Whereas the positivist would say there is no justice, there is no law, there are no oughts in terms of behavior apart from laws made by the state or whatever authority is there. Make sense? Jonah?
So would we be naturalists?
Well, it depends on your point of view. Are you? Do you believe that there is a natural law that precedes the existence of the state?
I don't know, I guess.
Then you're a naturalist.
So you said positivists are, they say that no justice or no law is, can you repeat that part?
There is no justice and no law apart from what is made by the state, by human government. When I say the state, I mean human government, right?
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? Now, are positive laws, that is man-made laws, wrong in and of themselves?
No.
No. Positivists might be. I agree with Adler in this, but they are not in and of themselves wrong. Question.
So did you say that the natural laws are independent of man-made laws?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that that's.
And as Christians, we would argue that natural law comes from God. So, Jonah, if I could rephrase this question to you, is there a law over and above? If natural law comes from God, is there a law over and above man-made law?
Yeah.
So you're a naturalist. Nicely. That's the correct answer. This then goes into two wrongs, right? We have mala per se and mala prohibita. What is mala per se?
What things should be regarded as wrong, even if there's no positive law.
Ellie, you could answer that question.
English should be regarded as wrong, even if it's not possible of prohibiting them.
Right, because what law are they breaking?
Violations of natural rights.
The natural law, right? So mala per se, wrong in itself. Wrong as it is, right? Give me an example of something that is mala per se. Murder,
Kidnapping.
kidnapping, theft, all of that stuff. Now what about mala prohibita?
Murder.
Things that are wrong only because they are prohibited by the ordinances of the community.
Right, can someone give me an example of this?
Parking like the wrong way, or not paying your little meter.
Right, to parking violations?
Trespassing.
No, violation of property rights.
Speeding.
Jaywalking,
Yeah, speeding.
speeding,
What a ridiculous.
running stop signs.
Running in the hall.
Running.
I think that is the mala per se. Not tucking your shirt in,
Stopping in the middle of the highway.
yeah.
Hitting somebody in the back of their car.
That's what she just said.
So we have this distinction between things that are wrong because they are violations of the natural law, things that are wrong because they violate the positive laws of the state. Now, is one of those things more wrong than the other?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
Maybe, we'll never know. Now,
Murder.
Oh, what'd you
is
say?
more on the speedy side.
why?
Well, nature, natural rights.
And why is that worse?
Natural rights make a good life.
Right, because natural rights are what lead you to living a good life. They also what the existence of government. What's the?
Proceed.
They precede it. They exist beforehand. Right. So, for example, on what side of the road do we drive in the United States? The right-hand side. In England, on what side of the road do they drive?
The wrong side.
The left. Now, does it? Now, would that be in the sphere of taste or the sphere of truth?
Taste.
True.
Taste.
Absolutely true.
That's your opinion. It's in the sphere of taste, right? That's how things have been decided to go. It's cultural, it's local. But so that is an example of something that would be right. If you start driving on the left-hand side of the road here, that's mala prohibita. You're still breaking a law, but it's a positive law. It has no effect on whether or not you live the good life, unless you die or kill somebody or whatever. So that distinction makes sense.
Yeah, these like parking laws, driving laws, etc., are really
Tax
examples of laws for the common good, the common welfare. We're gonna have a safe roads, people need to have certain rules. And those rules can vary from place to place.
So then maybe that can relate to Audrey's question earlier. Right? What takes precedent, natural rights or the common good? Any other questions, comments, concerns? Are you speaking for everyone? Yeah. Zoom children, questions, comments, concerns? Oh, Jake, and nice of you to join us. No, cool. And now his long anticipated return, the one, the only, the inimitable.
Hello there. Salve. Hola, ¿qué tal? Okay, so we're going to be looking at a couple of assignments. The first assignment is for your short essay. Your first short essay.
There's a lot less clapping on that one.
Yeah, those on Zoom, I sent you that assignment. You ought to get it out now and look at it. It was sent as an attachment or it's on RenWeb Docs. I also, after 2 or 3 efforts, sent you the essay that we're going to be examining. So that was maybe not quite so important to have out now, but you should know where that is. But at least get out the assignment for the short essay for political philosophy. And take one and keep passing them around. One of each. And I'll wait till those get around and for you guys to get out the short essay, assignment 1. Even there's something behind it.
That's a good question. Funnily enough, in the
Okay.
San Francisco Chronicle over the weekend, I think it
Oh,
was an
no.
op-ed published, which said if California wanted to truly pursue equity, parents would have to give up their children to the state. Well, no, it was like 2 days ago that this was published.
Oh, yeah, but that's like Mars, California. I'm sorry. All right, hello there.
It is.
I'm from Indiana, by the way.
Gary.
No, not Gary, Indiana. Nope,
Indiana.
nope, nope. Founded in 1908. and it's really
Not
gone
that
down.
trashy.
All right, so I'm going to be reading from this. Please pay attention to the instructions. Write a thesis-driven essay of 750 to 1,000 words concerning the article, "Is Having a Loving Family an Unfair Advantage?" by Joe Gallinesi. Okay, so you're going to be looking at that essay or article that's been written. And it's actually some of his interviews and readings from other people as well. Okay. The essay, the one you're writing, will argue either for or against the position adopted by Gallinesi using the relevant categories in the Adler writings concerning justice, equality, and fairness in the reading. Now, let me make this perfectly clear to everybody. This is not an essay about what your view is of Gallinesi's article. It is an essay in which you use Adler's categories of justice, equality, fairness, etc., to examine Gallinesi's article. Okay? And so what you're going to be really arguing is he right according to Adler's terms, or is he wrong? Okay? Whether you agree with Adler, whether you agree with Gallinesi is irrelevant. We're not asking for your views. The purpose for that really is to make sure, one, that you understand Adler's categories. Okay? Two, make sure then you can apply them to a very crucial issue in society about the place of the family and its relationship to the state. And now we find out that our friends in the California are starting towards this direction. All right. So is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Good. All right. The first section of the main body should be a summary of the position of Gallinesi and his reasons for it. So I'm telling you how to do this. You have an introduction. Oops, I don't want to have my high there. No, introduction, and then the first section, which could be very easily more than one paragraph, will be a summary of Gallinesi's position and his reasons for it. That makes sense. If you don't include this section, that's really going to kill your grade, because how can the reader possibly know what Gallinesi's position is if you haven't summarized it for him or her? Okay. The next sections will consist of an evaluation of Gelonesi's position from Adler's perspective and using Adler's categories. All right, that makes sense, everybody, so far. All right. This is not a research paper. You have Gelonesi's essay and the Adler writings in the reader. Those are the only sources that should be used, but they must be quoted. Okay, trying to get this across, making sure everybody understands. So first of all, don't use any outside sources. You have Adler, which you just finished reading, and you've got the essay or article from Gelonesi. That's what you use. It's not a matter of research here. It's a matter of you now understanding these two writings, okay, and explaining them. We do this too because we used to do research type papers and great ideas, and it was a lot more work for students going around trying to find good sources, and they didn't work out too well. And it's not really what we're about here so much about research training, okay? History is a different story, okay? All right. So those are the only sources, and they must be quoted. Don't just summarize Gelonesi in your words. Let's hear some quotations or read some quotations. The essay should follow the normal format of an introduction, main body conclusions, and a works cited page in accordance with LMLA guidelines. The two sources in the works cited page must be in this form. I just decided I'm going to give them to you. This is how they're to be done. I hope I got them right according to what I want to do. These are not necessarily MLA form, but that's what you're to use for the works cited. There's no need to think about how do I put Gelonesi's article or Adler. It's right there for you. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, I
So-
appreciate that.
The second section's us using like Adler and Wilson's ideas of justice to decide if he agrees with Gelonesi or not.
Yeah, if he would agree with it or not, or if Gelonesi's matches up with his categories, right? It's once again, not so much about, it's not really about what your view is. We'll talk about that, okay? But we're wanting to make sure that you understand what Adler writes. And also we're wanting to make sure that you can apply it to a contemporary issue. The essay should be submitted to turn it in and is due Friday, January 28th. Okay, so 750 to 1,000 words. You'll need to be concise. This is one of the things too, like when you quote from Adler or Gelonesi, try and give concise quotation. Don't quote 2 paragraphs from Adler and now you don't have any time to talk or write your own stuff, okay? So picking a good quotation is part of writing a good paper. Also, you should, if you have questions, come and ask us. Probably I would be the one mainly to ask about this since I'll be the one grading the essay. Mr. Boggs can help though too, especially if I'm not around for some reason. But let me just say this, don't come in and expect me to, don't come in and say, could you tell me what Adler means by justice? Could you tell me what Adler means by equality? That's your job. Come in with me with actual questions about, or even like maybe an outline of what you're going to do. That makes sense? It's not going to be very profitable if you come in and want me to write your paper for you. Helpful questions? Whoa. All righty. So next up, we're going to be moving into the scriptures. Okay. And so we're going to be looking at passages of scriptures. And you guys might want to get out this assignment, Great Ideas, Political Philosophy, Biblical Teaching, Lesson 1. It's going to be on Genesis 1 to 4. Let me take one of these and pass them around. Look, hey, watch it. What are you doing? What are you doing? That was my space. It's my time. You're trespassing.
No, this is owned by the entity known as.
The entity, sounds like a sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
Hey, I read the school constitution.
Take one and pass it around.
Yeah, right, I read that San Francisco article. It has the tone that's satire,
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, that's.
but
Oh,
looking at the other stuff this guy has written,
you don't
I
know.
don't know.
Well, and the trouble is.
Or what he's trying to get at, his point in his satire is,
Our age
it's
struggles.
juvenalian satire. It is satire. And what's juvenalian satire, class?
Wanting to make actual change.
And making a social difference. I
Hmm.
don't know what difference he wants.
Okay, fascinating. All right,
So it's not
Yellow Nessies
satire.
is not satire.
No, it is not. He is earnest,
All righty, so
as it is important to be earnest.
everybody got the assignment. This is for Thursday. As stated at the beginning of this course, political philosophy is the study of the ethical dimensions of human social organizations and the nature of man in society. Because many of us, most likely pretty much all of us, have been formed in and benefited greatly from a highly personalized and individualized approach to the Bible, we have become blind to its profound teachings on the political dimensions as defined above to God's revelation. So, your tendency, your training, your background is to say, okay, here's this Bible passage. What does it mean to me personally? And that's fine. Should ask that question. That's not the question we're asking here. We're not even asking if it applied just to one person. Rather, it's asking, what does the scriptures teach about right and wrong, the ethical dimension of a human social organization, about how human beings live in society? So the challenge will be to begin to read the scriptures politically, which really sounds bad in some of our tradition. They would say that's a terrible thing. But remember, politically here means the ethical dimensions of human social organizations. Okay? You guys have politics here within your houses, for example. Polis, the Greek word that comes from political, means city, city-state. It really means community, all right? Not just government. All right. The challenge will be to begin to read the scriptures politically. That is, taking into account what is being said concerning social organization and the nature of man in society. The following exercise is intended to help you begin to broaden your understanding and appreciation of God's word. Follow the instructions. Okay, follow the instructions. Number one, let's see, I better keep reading these for the sake of those online. Begin with prayer. This initial step is due to the nature of the text you are reading. It's a sacred text. The Bible is God's word. When we read it or study it in any context, our personal devotions, listening to a sermon in church, or doing a school assignment, it is God who is speaking to us. In particular, ask God to help you see what he is saying about the political realm of life, since this may very well be a new approach to you. So you may need God's help in this. We need it anyway all the time. So, all right. Secondly, read Genesis 1 to 4 in its entirety first, without answering the questions. These chapters are carefully constructed narratives. Trust me, I've gone over and over and over these passages. They're very carefully constructed narratives, stories, histories. To attempt to answer the questions without having read the whole story of these initial chapters of the first book of the Bible, and merely to pick out what appears to be relevant verses, is not to honor the way God has constructed his word. also is gonna lead you to misunderstanding it. Just like if you reading a novel and you make a conclusion, you hear something in the first page and go, oh, that's what it is all about. You don't really know what it's about till you've read through the whole thing, okay? So, all right. Number 3. The task of your first paragraph is to explain something chapters 1 and 2 say that would relate to human nature to equality, using one of the various understandings or dimensions of equality already encountered in the Adler reading. So Genesis 1 and 2, is there something there that talks about equality as Adler understands it? Does that make sense? All right. In addition to the minimum of 4 sentences of your reflection, so this is a little different here, the paragraph should also include a quotation from Genesis 1 or 2, whatever you choose, and a quotation from Adler on equality relevant to the biblical passage chosen. So once again, we're really trying to make sure you're understanding Adler here as well. So in other words, 4-sentence paragraph of your reflections plus a quotation from Adler and a quotation from Scripture on equality. Does that make sense? Genesis 1 to 2, not 3 and 4. Number 4, following the same procedure of biblical quotation, an Adler quotation, and at least 4 sentences of your own reflection, relate a specific injustice in the civilization founded by Cain, Genesis 4:17 to 24, either to the actions of Adam and Eve and their consequences, Genesis 3, or to those of Cain, Genesis 4:1 to 16, that would be an example of injustice, according to Adler. So let me just make sure we explain that. Things go bad in Genesis 3. If you don't know this, all right. Adam and Eve go against God's word, all right. And there are consequences. Things go bad with Cain and Abel. Genesis 4. There are consequences. At the end of Genesis 4, Cain has founded a city or a civilization, and it talks about that. Look at, in that description of Cain's civilization, Genesis 4:17 to 24, some kind of example of what you see as injustice that would be defined so by Adler, but tie it into something that happened with Adam and Eve or Cain. Does that make sense? All right, good. Now, this prohibition, do not use the word sin to describe the unjust act, because it doesn't tell us anything. The prohibition is not because sin is not a crucial aspect of injustice, but rather because the word is used vaguely. If you begin to use the word sin, stop and ask yourself, what kind of sin is being described? Then use that word instead of sin. Okay? Adam and Eve sinned. Cain sins. You could call all of those sins. But what kind of sin is committed? That's what you need to think about. It's not the same sin necessarily. Okay, that's the assignment for Thursday. Questions? Hand up? Nope. Okay. All righty. Zoomers. You're all there? I'm done.
That makes sense.
Makes sense, good.
Turkeys
Thanks.
are done, people are done.
Yeah. Well, I'm a turkey.
That is. Grandmother was, according to my mom.
So I have completed the classroom thing. So if you guys want to, you can sign off now. And I'll see you Thursday, I guess.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you guys.
You're welcome.